Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode. Hello, magnificent mystical beings. Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Rachel Fiori. Now, before I dive in to our topic and start to elevate us all with what I would love to chat about today, I'm going to give you a warning. I am here usually on the days that I record my podcast episodes. I have my dogs at doggy daycare, and there is a reason for that. Because they don't shut the hell up sometimes. They're very good. They're amazing. But I have 3 dogs behind me right now on the floor. Not that you can see them, even if you're watching this on YouTube. And I cannot guarantee that they will not jump up and go crazy if somebody comes to the door. I'm giving you that warning because I won't edit that out if that happens. If you hear weird noises behind me, if you hear snoring, especially with my Cane Corso, that's just life. The reason why I won't edit that out if that happens in this episode is because in order to become truly elevated beings, little things that would annoy us or bother us, aka those are triggering us, by the way. You don't have to be angry or enraged to be quote unquote triggered by anything. Triggered means I've allowed myself to be pulled out of peace. Something is activated inside of me. I'm annoyed. I'm bothered by this. So that means I'm triggered, which means I have healing to do, period, end. That's what that means. You'll learn that at Masters of Self University because that's what we coach and teach, how to master thyself. How do I master me? It does not mean that there are not things in the world that are absolutely horrific and horrifying, but when they are, and I get triggered or activated in anger, a lower vibrational frequency, a lower negative emotion, that is a clue for me to go in and do the work on myself so that I don't stay at such a low state. Why? I'm not powerful when I'm in that low state. That's why. Period. End. So if there is an injustice and there is a reason, quote unquote, all the horrific things going on in the world, all the extremes, especially right now, shit is coming to the surface, isn't it? And the more you see how horrific people are, the abuse, the trafficking, all of the horrible things, yeah, it's enough to make you sick. It is gut-wrenching. The devastating fires going on in Maui. How could you not? I mean, how could your heart not break when you see this? But here's where I want you to learn and elevate that because something hurts or bothers you, you get activated into a vibrational frequency, an emotional frequency that is quote unquote negative. Okay. It doesn't mean to stay there. Sometimes when you see these horrible things, or, my dog decides to jump up and bark at something all of a sudden while I'm recording this, because they're usually not here on this day. And if that annoys you, boy, do you have healing to do. That's going to bother you. Do you see it? But even if it's something really devastating or horrific and you're hearing about it, of course, it's supposed to make you feel bad, you guys. People who do violent, horrible things, enslave people in this planet, yeah, that's not supposed to make you feel good, okay? But if you stay in that low frequency, you're losing your power, your divine power. And if there is an injustice, you want to connect to the part of you that is nothing but divinely powerful, because that's what's going to help heal and alchemize that injustice, period, end. You want to quickly get to your power when you've been triggered in fear, in sadness, in grief, in anger, in whatever it is. You want to reclaim your power, and to do that is connect to your divine light. Alchemize the negative emotions that are there. Okay, that's part of what we teach at Masters of Self University. Jump in, take our coaching programs, join our group coaching classes so that you can learn how to do this for yourself. It's absolutely liberating to live your life this way. Just a pure emotional freedom. That's emotional sovereignty, if you want to know the real definition, flowing through life like that. And so, talking about flowing through life, let me mention what our actual topic is. Just because it's your reality doesn't make it real. Just because it's your reality doesn't make it real. Just because that is something that you are experiencing doesn't make it real. Uh-oh, what does this mean? This could get very confusing. I invite you to sit and drop into your heart for this one so that your mind, our egoic minds, always are confused when it comes to more elevated topics. So I invite you to drop in to the way of patience, to the way of presence, and take your time digesting what I'm going to offer you. Okay. And like always, I always do my best to put it in the most simplistic language I possibly can so that you can grasp esoteric topics, and enlightened teachings can be offered most of the time and much of the time in a very simplistic way for everyone to get it so they can elevate. I'm going to do my best to do that with this one today. But just because it's your reality doesn't make it real. Okay. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? So you may be experiencing something, any life experience. Okay. You may be experiencing extreme, the ongoing, it's almost laughable how extreme it still is on this planet. Oh, the extreme misogyny and sexism. Um, the men coaching other men in men's groups, like teaching them, here's how you get women to open and soften and all this crap, and you think it's actually like helping. You're teaching men to continue to dominate and control women because they have to open and soften without mastering the self. Why are a lot of women hardened and not open to you? First of all, you only want them to open to you because you're controlling and manipulating, and you want it for your advantage. You're using them because it's better for you. We're still running programs of misogyny. Holy shit. Imagine that. They don't have to open and soften to you. Stop running programs of entitlement. Women aren't here for you. They're not your slave. They're not your objects. Cut this crap out. All right. Like, it's insane. Get them to soften. You're the ones that need to soften. Why are women hardened? Because of the way they're treated. They're tired of being treated as sex objects. They're tired of being enslaved, getting their rights taken away and removed every other freaking week. You turn around, less rights for women. Like, it's psychotic what's going on. The inequality that still exists is crazy. I mean, it's laughable at this point. And then men are actually teaching and coaching other men. Here's how you get women to soften. Well, maybe you should get men to stop raping. Maybe go there. Maybe that's what should happen. Did you ever think of that? Maybe women wouldn't have to live in fear going to the grocery store that they're going to be attacked in the parking lot if that some of you out there are so preaching you're the protectors. Are you? You're not doing a very good job. You have failed if that's what you are. Now, some of you divine men out there, you don't fall into this group that I'm talking about. You can tell you don't fall into this category because you're not triggered by what I'm saying. You're like, yep, no, goes on. That's real. If you're not triggered by this and you're a man, then you don't fall into the category of men, obviously, than what I'm referring to. But that's a massive problem. That's why I'm bringing it up. So the misogyny, the sexism, as I stay with this example, is still a very tangible thing. It is a reality that humans have created. You experience this in your reality. The majority of the planet still runs very deeply rooted misogynistic programs on this planet. Women are still being enslaved all over the place, all over the world, in various ways, in very literal ways, with human and sex trafficking. Yes, they're literally being kidnapped and kept as sex slaves. So, slavery is real, and it's not the ones that happened decades or centuries ago that we still whine and cry about. It's actually happening right now. So maybe we should be less selfish and narcissistic and take our tunnel vision off the fucking table and open up and expand to what has actually happened right now, literally as we talk or as you listen to this. Because there are a lot of women and a lot of children that need to be helped and saved from the slavery they're in right now. So let's start to wake up and deal with the reality of what's going on in our world. So if that's the reality of what's going on in our world, and I'm just sticking with this one example to keep it simple, I could give 1,000 of them, of course. What's real? Now, here's where it could get confusing to some. Okay, so I'm going to try to take this slow just to make sure you can digest it very easily. What isn't real is inequality. Misogyny and sexism isn't real, and yet it exists in our reality. Why isn't it real? This is the illusion that we create when we are unconscious beings. We are not enlightened beings. We, as divine co-creators of our reality while we're here on earth, we literally co-create together what our reality is, what our human experiences will be. We co-create that. You create that as an individual on a micro level. You create that by default on the macro level, on the level of the collective. We are one. This is oneness consciousness. Understand it, that the collective, you're not separate from the collective. You are the collective. Even if there are things going on in the collective that are horrifying, that are, programs of inequality, of abuse, of domination, of whatever, of racism, right? When these things are being experienced in our realities, how are we creating it from the place that we are standing in? And if any of you says right now, I don't do it, I don't participate in that, right there is the goddamn problem. You are the problem. You don't have to be outwardly creating these horrific things to not be contributing to it and perpetuating it in behaviorally and energetically because of the programs you run in your life. You think your life is separate from everyone else, and that's because you still live in separation consciousness. Period. End. We have to elevate and educate enough in our spiritual education, in oneness consciousness education, to understand how these things actually work, to create the realities that we experience while we're here, that we live in while we're here. It's not about, oh yeah, I create my reality, so I just ignore and avoid everything else that goes on in the world, and I just focus on me, myself, and I, because I'm selfish and I'm a narcissist and I'm very entitled and I think that I'm the center of the universe. No, that's not oneness consciousness teachings. You're not an elevated being when we do that. Okay. What's real is the way of equality. That is what's actually real. The only thing that's real are each and every one of the universal ways of oneness. These are the laws of the universe itself. It's how the universe functions itself. It's how all of the universes, it's how oneness consciousness herself functions. It's how creator consciousness herself functions. Source herself functions as the way of equality, as the way of responsibility, as the way of surrender and truth and compassion and connection. That's what's real. What is real is the way of connection. We are connected, whether we realize it or not. Our reality might mean that we have created a connection that is very dysfunctional, that is superior, inferior, aka inequality. We might connect in ways that create a tremendous amount of resistance to what is a lack of surrender. Why? Because it's abusive or horrifying or unfair or controlling. Do you see the difference? Pause it, go back 20 seconds and listen to that again. What's real is the way of wisdom flowing through everything and everyone, even if you're not connected to it, because you've disconnected from the way of wisdom, from the way of equality, from the way of selfless service, from the way of honoring. You've disconnected from the way of humility, which means you've disconnected from your divine self, your highest self you can be in a lifetime, the most enlightened version of you. You've disconnected from that because you're participating in a reality that goes against divinity itself, oneness consciousness itself. You've disconnected from that, which means you're creating a reality of darkness, of fear, of domination, of control, of suffering, of suffering, of suffering. The very things that you all want liberated from. And yet, a lot of people who claim to want to be free from suffering and claim to want to be liberated and want to be emotionally and physical and spiritually sovereign beings are also the very ones that contribute to the paradigms and perpetuate the programs systemically and collectively that actually lock inequality in place. And you don't know it. You'll say, no, not me. You don't know it. You don't see it. That is what awakening actually is. It is the mystical, energetic experience of seeing the way as the way of truth, because I am the way of truth. That you can see the truth in all things, not my truth, your truth bullshit. That's reality. That's egoic, unhealed, third dimensional reality that we spent centuries creating and mastering as humans. We have mastered separation consciousness. So understand what that means. You have mastered it. And when you've mastered something, it means it has become innately you. You are that thing. You don't have to think about it. It is your knee-jerk response and reaction to things. Simple example. If you can think back and remember what it was like as a teenager, the very first time you started to learn how to drive a car, you had to really think about it. You had to think about all the things you need to do. You have to check your mirrors. You have to put your seatbelt on. You have to start the car in a certain way. You have to put it in drive. You have to actually have your foot on the brake before you put it in drive. Like there's all these little things. You got to look out your window. You got to look here. There's all these things that you have to do. And there's a lot of things that you have to do to drive a car, to learn how to drive it and to drive it safely and to keep yourself and other people safe, right? Now think about it right now in this moment, depending on how many years or decades you've been driving a car, you don't think about it. You literally don't concentrate on how to drive the car because you've mastered it. It has become second nature. It is so innately your ability to simply jump in your car and go. And half the time, you don't even think about, you don't remember that you did stop at stop signs and at red lights, and you put your turn signal on appropriately. You changed lanes safely. You know, you did all of those things without saying, okay, I have to put my turn signal on. And now I have to see if it's clear and there's enough space for me to get into this lane. And then I have to look at my mirrors. And then I have to, you don't think like that. Why? You've mastered it. Do you understand? I'm going to say this again. I really want this to sink in on a deeper level. You don't think about it. It's automatic. It is running on autopilot. That is you mastering something. And now I'm going to take it back and say this again. You've mastered separation consciousness. You've mastered it in all the ways that we as individuals and as a collective create nothing but separation, separation, separation consciousness, which functions from the dark side, the shadow side of divinity, because it isn't oneness consciousness. In oneness consciousness, there are no opposites. But we just have different perspectives. You're fucking fucktard. Get out of here, grow up, and elevate out of separation consciousness, because there is a universal truth in all things, no matter what the situation is. What is the universal truth? And if we learn to function from oneness consciousness, what that actually means, not some watered down post on social media fucking bullshit because it makes me sound spiritual and then you'll pay me money and follow me everywhere. I'm not talking about that superficial fucking shit that needs to go away. I'm talking about when you really educate yourselves and actually learn to become oneness consciousness. It isn't an intellectual learning. It is literally a becoming it. You function as it because it is you. Why? Because that's what oneness means. You've mastered separation consciousness. So you don't think about or see, you're not conscientious of, you're not consciously aware of all of the ways you continue to perpetuate separation. And that means the enslavement of women and children and misogyny and sexism and racism that you still continue to perpetuate, even though you're going to sit here and say, not me. Again, you're who I'm talking to if that's what you say. They're so deeply ingrained. A person who is not just some spiritual fucking freak out there who doesn't know shit but pretends like they know stuff versus a being who is an initiate on the path of mystical awakening, mystical becoming, the mystical journey that they claim to be on in order to become oneness consciousness authentically and help to spread that out into the world. When you are willing to become and take the warrior's journey, which of course spiritual people have hijacked that as well. You're a spiritual warrior. That sounds great. It makes my ego feel a little better about itself because I can call myself warrior and I'm spiritual. So there we go. That just means I'm awakened. No, it fucking doesn't. Not even close. The warrior's journey is fucking hard. It's hard for a reason because you're meant to become something greater. You don't build muscle by sitting on your ass. You don't make it to the NFL by tossing a football around with a bunch of kids and that's all you ever do. You have to work hard to get there. How could we be this fucking ignorant to think that you don't have to actually put a divine level of effort in becoming the hardest thing that there is to become on this planet? And the hardest thing that there is to become on this planet is the simplest thing to become. And that is an enlightened being of oneness consciousness. It is the hardest thing to become, and it's the simplest goddamn thing to become because it is your true nature. It is the true nature that is you anyway. But we have mastered other things. We've mastered the small self. That's why Masters of Self University is an enlightened, elevated level of spiritual, mystical education. We start with education on all levels, intellectual levels, energetic levels, emotional levels, in order to guide you into elevating, healing, transforming, and elevating into a being of oneness consciousness for real, because it's the only thing that's real. See, inequality isn't real. It's a made-up thing that we've co-created to experience while we're here, and we've gotten trapped in it. We are trapped in it. We've created this fucked up, toxic, psychotic, patriarchal society of domination and superior and inferior and ego, ego, ego. Oh my God, this planet lacks harmlessness and gentleness. We've created that as our reality, and whether you want to admit it or not, you continue to contribute to that. So anybody awakening authentically would say, oh my gosh, so my job is to find out how I may still be perpetuating that and contributing to that. Because if I'm authentically awakening for real, I understand that the very first way of oneness is the universal way of oneness, is the way of responsibility. My responsibility is to become fully awakened, which means I have an acute level of self-awareness of every goddamn program I run. I become aware of my program that I run every day, all day, until I can heal and alchemize all of them. So I am no longer just programmed to be something that goes against my divinity. That's what that means. That's true, authentic awakening. How do I contribute to these horrific things out there instead of living in separation consciousness that tells me, oh, that's not my fault. That's not my responsibility. Huh, it's not. Well, then you are not functioning in oneness consciousness, which means you are functioning in separation consciousness, which means you are part of the problem. You're not living in what is divinely real. because separation consciousness isn't real. It is a reality we've created to experience, and that's your difference. So if you're experiencing things in your reality that you don't prefer, and let's get real, let's be honest. Let's say that in a different way. Let's be honest. If you're a human, there's a lot of shit that we experience that we would rather not experience while we're here. Isn't that the truth? I would rather not experience this over here. I would rather not experience the world being in such turmoil and chaos right now. I would rather not experience that. I do have my preferences. However, can you become the universal ways of oneness in the midst of all of this? Can you become that? And you can, by the way. You actually can. Will you? Maybe is a better question. Will you step up to the plate? Can this world, can this planet, can Mother Earth herself, can women and children and boys and girls and men count on you in oneness because we're one? Can we all count on you to elevate yourself high enough, powerful enough to help change the reality we've all created since we've been alive on this planet and the generations that came before us? And guess what? Separation consciousness, the generations that came before us, that's fucking you. You've reincarnated over and over and over again. You don't know what side you fell on when some of the horrific things were happening on this planet. You could have been the perpetrator, and I guarantee you fucking were. We have lived in darkness, in dark ages for centuries in our level of consciousness because we've been such a low level of consciousness. We have been very hard at work at mastering separation consciousness. Really get what that means. It means anything that is truly elevated in oneness, in love, not here in the collective. Now, prior to now, there were only a very small percentage of people at any given time on the planet that were elevated enough and therefore eligible to receive, so to speak, the most elevated teachings on the planet to become enlightened beings. Okay? This is a truth, by the way. And those enlightened beings, those enlightened teachers, there was I always like to keep things really simple, right? So I'm going to just say it like this. It's like a closed group, private members only kind of thing. Okay? And it wasn't, not that it couldn't be in some scenarios and, certain groups changed and they didn't do things in the most elevated, enlightened ways. But I'm going to keep it simple. And generally speaking, these like private members only closed groups of spiritual beings, the highest levels of them that existed, you had to become an initiate. You were selected, like you had to prove that you had what it took inside of you to master all of the challenges and tests of initiation to become the spiritual warrior that would then only start to become the divine servant that they were here to become, to serve humanity, to serve, other people and I have to be careful how I say this, because they were really a selected group of people where you kind of had to make it, like you had to earn your way in. I used professional athletes as an example earlier. I'll say the NBA. If you're going to make it to the NBA, not everybody makes it. That's a select group of people, right? Because they are some of the best athletes in the entire world, and they are the best basketball players. That's why they've made it to the NBA. Do you understand? When it comes to spiritual awakening and the mystical path of authentically, becoming an enlightened being and what that means, the entire world did not have access to that for the longest time. Okay? The reason is people came here, they were functioning in separation consciousness and all different grades of consciousness, but mostly lower ones. And that's not a put down. It's not a judgment. It just was what it was. And then the more evolved beings understood there was something much greater to become while you're here. And then they would teach other people and take people into their mystery schools. And but it wasn't that information and those teachings were not made accessible to, you know, all population, the collective everywhere. That's just the way it was. It was very protected information. Okay. Because if given to the wrong people or falling in the wrong hands, if people who were not yet awakened enough or highly conscious enough, they would do terrible things with the information that they got, and they have. I mean, it's been proven over and over and over and over again. So, what's real? The only thing that is actually real are the universal ways of oneness. The truth of what you are, the way of truth is real. And yet, in our reality that we experience, God, are we filled with a shit ton of lies? Doesn't it suck to be lied to be cheated on, to be betrayed, to be stolen from, to be backstabbed? That's a reality. It doesn't mean that's real. Lying, cheating isn't real. The only thing that's real is your divinity. And we are being called to come back to that, which is why I gave the example of, mystery schools and exclusivity when it comes to awakening authentically for real and becoming enlightened beings was used to be reserved for a very tiny percentage of the population on the planet. And that has changed. Everyone can learn how to become an enlightened version of your human personality self. Every person. And it's time that we offer this education in a way that the collective can comprehend all the misunderstandings of what it means to be enlightened. Just because you throw robes on and you meditate on a mountain for 30 years, first of all, it doesn't mean you are enlightened. And secondly, if you reach a level of enlightenment doing that, good for you. I applaud you. That's awesome. Okay. Giving up all human experiences to sit in a cave and meditate. Not the easiest thing to do, especially for like 30 straight years of it. Not the easiest thing to do. So I honor you. I applaud you on your path. But I will also say, can you take that enlightenment to your everyday interactions, to relationships, to romantic relationships? Can you take that to, every single thing that you do to continue to have a human experience and be human and still be enlightened? And that is where we've fallen short. That is where we've fallen short. So are you really enlightened if you can't take that level of peacefulness and power? And no, it doesn't mean passivity. That's another completely misperceived teaching, or, I'll have to be careful what I say. People like to ban me sometimes on social media and on my platforms. It is one of the twisted levels of brainwashing to trick spiritual people who are called to the spiritual path, to the mystical path of awakening. It has been a very manipulative form of brainwashing to try to trick you into thinking that in order to be spiritual, you have to be passive. Never say a word, never stand up, never rise up against anything. Does that sound like some brainwashing bullshit? In order to make sure, well, if you're really spiritual, you talk in a certain way, you dress in a certain way, you're quiet, you're passive, you don't fight against anything. Sounds like indoctrination to me. Funny what we think some forms of spirituality, and we like to call them enlightenment. I'd like to see that enlightenment when tragedy strikes or all the horrific things that are going on in the world right now. Do we just ignore them and pretend like, well, I'm not a part of that because I'm not a part of the collective? That's separation consciousness, so that is not enlightenment. That is separation consciousness, so that literally is not, cannot be enlightenment. True enlightenment can only function from oneness consciousness. That's what it is. Erasing certain people from existence isn't inclusion. It's separation fucking consciousness. It's domination. It's misogyny. It's control. And quite frankly, it's also mental illness and psychotic on a lot of you who are being brainwashed into that nonsense. So our reality, as crazy as it is, isn't real, and that means it isn't the truth of what we are. Even the crazy ones going out doing all the terrible things they're doing, that isn't the real them. Don't misunderstand that. It doesn't mean that it's okay. It doesn't mean that it's okay what they're doing. It doesn't mean any of the things they do. We don't justify it. We don't downplay it. We don't sugarcoat it. Enlightened beings have the power to call shit out, and yet they don't do it with judgment. Now, right now, I'm going to call a lot of you out because that's where you're falling short on your path, where you think you're awakening and elevating, but you're calling other people out in the world, and you're doing it from a place of superiority, a place of judgment. And that means you're running a program of inequality. That's separation consciousness. That is an example of how you yourself continue to perpetuate separation consciousness on this planet. Just learn to elevate and learn how to shift into what's real. What's real? Oneness consciousness. What's real? Every single universal way of oneness. Grab your copy on Amazon if you haven't. 20 Ways of Oneness. The 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, taught by the spirit of an enlightened dog. Get your copy. Start to learn how to function from oneness. Start to learn how to become the powerful being that you can become in divinity and light in order to help transform what is going on in the planet. Because it is a part of what you are. It's a part of your reality. You're here, alive right now. It's part of your reality for a reason, so that you can step up and become the warrior to help shift it and change it and alchemize it on this planet. There are too many people in the darkness doing the horrific things that they're doing, and not enough people of genuine, authentic light. The most powerful, enlightened version of you that you can become is a being that functions, has become oneness consciousness herself. You are the one, when you become that, to help change everything that you see that you're afraid of, that you don't like, all the suffering in your personal life that you experience. When you learn to become these things and you learn to work with the energy that you are to alchemize and transform energy, then you learn how to change literally the reality. And you can now, we have the power together to take reality that we're experiencing and what is real and unite them together in oneness. Why? Because what's real has the power to alchemize all the dark shit that we don't want to see on this planet anymore. And if you're not functioning there yet, you're functioning in a false self and a fake self, and you're creating the fucked up reality that you claim to not want to live in anymore. And that's what we have to wake up from. That's what I invite you to awaken from. Be very careful when you think you're awake. I see so many people who think they're awake. They're asleep in a fucking coma. Nowhere near ready to open their eyes and come back to life. So be careful. Wake up for real. I invite you to wake up for real. How often are you triggered? Start there. You want to learn more and be taken step by step? Go to mastersofselfuniversity.com. Join one of our group classes. We teach you this step by step. And we have a lot of different programs to teach you. Get the coaching to put you on the right trajectory so that you can become not just self-aware, but you can actually alchemize as you become more self-aware, elevate higher. You can alchemize more. You gain more energetic power to make a difference on this planet in your life with your suffering. You shouldn't be suffering anymore. We teach you step by step how to alchemize that, how to become the real you versus the one who's suffering in this reality. because man, is there a big difference between the two. And I want you to become the real you because that's the powerful you. That is the divinely powerful you. And the divinely powerful you connected to the divinely powerful me in oneness, and the divinely powerful him in oneness, and the divinely powerful her in oneness, and the divinely powerful thousands of others in oneness has the power to completely transform this entire planet. But we have to come together in oneness for real. That is not just a concept or something that's fun to talk about. You don't talk about it to get followers. You talk about it and you teach about it. You become it in order to create massive, massive real change on this planet. And we are able and powerful enough to do that together in oneness as a divinely loving team. But if you don't participate on that team, you're on the other team, literally creating more darkness without even realizing it half the time. So let that sink in. Let that sink in. The more powerful the team of light becomes, the more power we have to embrace the darkness lovingly and alchemize it in real time and make it gone from this planet. Our team, the team of light warriors, mystical journeymen, mystical journeywomen, mystical initiates, and mystics themselves. We don't see the dark side as quote unquote the other team and opposite. We see them as broken souls, unawakened beings who are one with us, that we need to unite together in our light and our mystical powers, embrace, love, guide, teach, support, help, so that they can transform into the light that they are, which is the only thing that's real. No matter what your reality is, the only thing that is real is oneness consciousness. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done it already, share this with everyone you know, and don't forget to visit us at mastersofselfuniversity.com. Check out our coaching programs, get a free consultation to find out more. Go dive into that Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness digital course. It's available now on our website. You can dive right in. And don't forget to grab that book on Amazon, Mason's Way, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness taught by the spirit of an enlightened dog. Thanks for listening. All the love in the universe to you, simply to remind you that that is what you are. That's the truth of what you are. Wake up to the truth of what you are. Love yourself more today than you did yesterday, and spread that love to the rest of the world. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.